let's start this first segment of the course and talk a little about last year, actually. 2015 was said by journalists to be the year of the robots. So there was a paper in Wired. Wired is one of the most famous and popular technology journals in the world. It's extremely famous. It's very well written. It's very light in content. It talks about technology. You can check. They have a very, very good website where loads of stories are posted related to technology in the large sense, including robots and artificial intelligence. So in the issue of Wired for 2015, there was this paper that was saying, 2015 will be the year of the robots. And the paper was talking primarily about three sorts of robotic technologies that would become pervasive in 2015. The paper talked about robotic cars. We mentioned that already. So of course, you all think of the Google car. It's interesting actually to see how Google sort of put its name on this technology, but you must be aware that many car manufacturers are today working on driverless cars, right? So it's not only a Google issue. A lot of people focus on Google because it's sort of iconic technology company, but more traditional car makers are investing loads of dollars in driverless systems and driverless technology. You've heard of drones, right? We hear all the time about drones. People use drones for picturing wedding ceremonies. The military uses drones to bomb enemy troops, and sometimes civilians. We unfortunately hear that almost on a daily basis. Those drones look like tele-guided aircrafts, but they have certain features which make them a little more intelligent than tele-guided devices that you may have used when you were kids. Drones are also used in Kenya to protect rhinos from people willing to steal horns or elephants. Right? So in large spaces, the forest civil service uses drones to monitor that no illegal activity that harms animals is taking place. So the paper was talking about that. It was also talking about some things that you may not know. We call that hive or swarm robots. So those are a little bit like hives of bees that fly together, so very small bots, and they fly together and they can achieve, because they are very small, but they are very numerous and they are very coordinated, they can achieve tasks beyond human capability. So you can send them on the location of a natural disaster, like an oil spill or a nuclear leak, and ask them to clean up. You can ask them to sort of penetrate tunnels or conduits that are out of reach to humans. 152 floor in a big building. There's this pipe. It's not really accessible to humans. You send those bots, and they do the work, right? So there's loads of sort of industrial activities that those bots can do. There's loads of social activities. There's loads of even political activities that those bots can do, and we can see that with the use of bots. Bots is sort of reducted name for robots, right? People say bots. It's easier to say bots than a robot, okay? So the paper was talking about that. So why would we talk about that? Because, you know, after all, when you think about it and when you read a little into robotics and artificial intelligence, it seems to be quite an old field. The people that talk about it, they actually sort of trace back the history of robotics and research in AI in the 1930s, 1940s, with the rise of computer science, right? So most people, if you ask scientists, they are very divided, as all scholarly communities. But if you ask scientists, and if you read about it, you know, what AI or robotics is really about, they would tell you, you know, it's primarily a sort of branch of computer science. Right? It's sort of derivative of computer science. So people working in those big computers, you may have seen pictures of those big computers used during World War II, right? ENIAC, right? You know, a room big like that or even bigger, right? And that was a computer. That was probably, I don't know, 1,000,000 times less powerful than what you have now in your pockets. That was the first computer, right? The work on those computers that's, you know, derived into research in artificial intelligence. Now, there's a good reason for that. So there's a good reason why it sort of came from computer science, and I think it's important that we stay just a minute on it. So you can read on the slides, there was this famous conference in 1956, and where you can see the sort of seminal idea that a number of scholars that convinced this conference they had, and you can read it. You can read it there. It says, so this is sort of invitation to the conference, right? Read that as a sort of invitation to the conference, and it explains a little what's going to be discussed at this conference in Dartmouth. And they say, so we're going to proceed on the basis of the conjecture, which is a bit like the conjecture is a sort of assumption, a postulate, right? A sort of intuition, if you prefer, that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence, human intelligence, can in principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. So what those people are saying in this invitation, and they want to talk about it at this conference, is to say that the outcomes that the mind of a human achieves is possible to replicate with a machine. So machines, we believe that machines can achieve the same outcomes as the mind. Now, it's a little bit subtler than that. They are computer scientists, those people, and a bunch also of psychologists and other scholars. So what they think as a postulate is that the mind's process is a physical process, right? It's a physical process like all sorts of processes, like almost every process you see in the nature and in the universe. It's a physical process. And they think that this physical process, as any other, as a mere physical process, you can modelize it. You can modelize it as a computational algorithm. Okay, what does that mean? It's to say the process that takes place in the mind is a physical process, and you can probably summarize it as a sort of equation, right? There is a sort of, it's something that you can, so an algorithm is a set of instructions to achieve a result. X plus Z plus Y gives omega, right? So those people working, those engineers working in computer science, they say there's no reason why the mind and the brain, which is the organ that sort of operates the mind, right? There's no reason why that is not a physical process, like anything in nature is physical. And it contains a set of instructions, an algorithm, that you can describe and that you can operate. It's just a sort of computational problem. So of course the question is, what is the algorithm, right? And those people say, we don't know. That we don't know. So we don't know the equation of the brain. We don't know it. We don't know the physical process that gives rise to the mind. But, and this is a big, big but, they think that because computational power, so it means it's calculation power from machines, computers, and because data are improving dramatically, maybe a computer can do the same as the brain, even though we don't know the equation, right? So you don't need to know the equation, but you can achieve the same outcome, right? Just by using brute force computational power, calculation power, and by using large quantities of data, right? So you may not know what is the equation that one finds in each and every one's brain, right? How maybe, you know, God wrote the equation, but you can achieve the same result, right? It's a bit like, you know, black box engineering, right? So it's a bit like you see this, you don't know how this company, whatever it is, made it, right? You don't know. But if you look at it, and you know you have good softwares to copy it, you have good software to understand the material that it is, you know what it's doing. If you pump on it, it will spread liquid and a sort of gas, compressed liquid, which freezes things. So just by looking at it with a sufficient amount of expertise and computational power, you may be able to reproduce it. You probably don't know how the initial manufacturer made it, right, through which process it went, but you know what it does, and you have sufficient amount of knowledge, data, and skills to achieve the same outcome, right? So this is what artificial intelligence is about, right? It's not about reproducing the brain of a human. It's achieving same outcomes by postulating that the brain is a physical process that has its own algorithm, but with the use of computational power and data, we can achieve the same outcome. Do you understand? Yes? Okay. So second big idea. It's very important you understand that, right? So but when people talk about artificial intelligence, you know, remember, artificial, right? Artifacts. Artifact, art, constructed, done by man intervention, not given by nature. Artifact, artificial. Right? Okay, so this is a very important nuance, right? And it's key. Now, of course, this idea is very disputed in the scientific community, right? You have some people, they say it's not possible, there's just one source of intelligence, it's nature, right? So there's a big discussion. Some people say, well, it's actually not a data problem, you know, actually we don't need so much the data. Some people say it's not really a computational problem. There's loads of divides in the scientific community over the ability to do that and what sort of problem it is, right? Some people, I know, who believe in God, refuse to actually think that you can reduce the mind to a physical process, right? At the same time, decades of research in neuroscience have not been able to show that the trace of God existed, right? So, neuroscientists, they've been investing loads of time to see whether there was something like sort of human spark of genius, which you can't capture, and they've never been able to prove it. So it's not easy, it's very disputed. But anyway, let's just use that as a postulate. So the second big idea I wanted to talk about is that artificial intelligence has the ability to improve itself. Machines can learn. Machines evolve. Intelligence evolves. So this artificial intelligence constructed by man, which seeks to emulate what the mind process can achieve, may surpass what the mind of a human can do, may be better, and possibly way better, since if we continue to sort of improve computational power, think calculation power, right? So if we improve calculation power of machines, and we see that there's a law which is called the Moore's law, which says that computational power, in a nutshell, doubles every 18 months, right? So your computer will be 2 times more powerful in 18 months, in principle. Moore's law, designed by an engineer from the company Intel. Very famous, not much disproved. So if this is a prospect that computational power advances, maybe one day those AIs will surpass humans, right? Or non-artificial intelligence. So think a little about that, right? Well, okay, so that's the second big idea. So machines can learn and probably improve, and this is interesting. Okay. Now, one of the third thing that I want to tell you, so you really get it, is that we know. It's the history of mankind that machines can do things better than man can do, right? That's why we have computers. Now, so we use, so far we've used a lot machines to do things that we don't know how to do well, right? The thing is that those AIs and those robots, right, which were so far just used for things people cannot do well, processing large amounts of information, sending a rocket to the moon, right? As they improve and just improve and improve and improve and improve, if they improve, they can even do things that we do very easily. Like, I know, walk in the room without bumping in the walls. Right? We don't need a machine to help us not bumping in the wall, right? Those machines, they can do that, right? They can drive. We drive fairly well, right? I mean, I drive very well. That said, maybe a machine would just drive way better, right? So the fact that those machines increasingly evolve and become better, of course they become better at doing things we cannot do, but they also become better at doing things that we do fairly well. And this is where people get very scared, right? Because they feel that humans will become remote. The human flesh, the human skull, the human eye, the human touch. Now, why would you, spend time walking in a room when someone else can do it? Why don't you just live through an agent? Why would you do that? It's less costly, it's less exhausting. Maybe you can live forever if you sleep in a bed for your entire life, right, and have a machine interact with others, right? There's a movie with Bruce Willis called Clones. I don't watch Bruce Willis movies every day. Let me reassure you. But this one is a sci-fi movie, and it's a little bit about that they're in a world where people do not go out. They stay in a sort of shell. and they have a mask, and they have a robot that is in the real world and operates a number of things, and does all the heavy lifting. And those people just stay in their flats and idle, and they just control the bots through that device, right? It's pretty scary. The movie is crap, huh? But the story, the initial story, is interesting. Okay, so keep those ideas with you. So number one, the mind is a physical process that you can emulate through the use of brute force computational power. Number two, machines can evolve, learn, and improve, maybe beyond what humans can do. And third thing, as machines evolve, they can do very sophisticated tasks, and at the same time they can do tasks for which men and humans are very good in principle, and that generates all sorts of issues, legal issues, driverless car again, ethical issues. Do we want to live in a society where people don't talk to each other anymore? It's just bots doing that. Interesting. Okay. So so I said it's a sort of old area. It's an old area, and when you talk about AI, very often you have the stories about Deep Blue, the IBM computer that defeated Garry Kasparov, a master chess player, in the 1990s. You have the story of Watson, which is IBM's latest artificial intelligence, which defeated a team of young, very bright students at the game Jeopardy. And Jeopardy is not simply a game where you have to sort of return exact questions, exact answers to factual questions, like on what day was Barack Obama born. It's a little more subtle. It has all sorts of puns and tweaks in the questions. So it's not a sort of straightforward Q&A game on facts, right? Any computer could do that better than anyone. Just check Wikipedia and return the question, right? But so the Jeopardy Watson achievement was something quite shocking, because the questions are tricky. They're quite tricky, right? And so the machine beats the team of very, very bright students. Now again, in 2016, so Google announced that its AI called DeepMind, or rather a team of scholars working for the DeepMind project, had designed an AI that was capable to win and defeat a human champion at the game called Go. Right? So Go is apparently, I don't play Go, I don't know actually what Go is, but apparently it's a very, very, very complex game. Right? Rules are quite simple, but sort of operations through which it can go are extremely complex, right? And it was a sort of frontier in AI, because no AI had ever defeated a human on that game, and they managed to do it, right? So the history of AI is very much populated by the stories about machines winning over humans at playing games like checkers, chess, and now the Go game. Now, so that's of course that's quite interesting. So now, if you look into the future, with the rise of those machines, we can read very, very scary stuff. Very scary stuff. I think the scariest thing you can read is a book, or books and papers published by an American intellectual called Kurzweil, and he has a book called Singularity is Near. So what is it about? Well, he's explaining that technology will just increase and increase and increase in power. And it's a sort of inexorable law that technology will just improve and improve and improve exponentially. And that we will reach a stage of singularity where machines and humans will just become one. Singularity. Become one, and we'll no longer know if we're machines or humans. It says that the baby boomers, so the baby boomers are the people who were born after World War II, will live long enough to see singularity. And what will happen with singularity? Well, you have a roadmap. In 2020, personal computers like that will have the same processing power as the brain. 2030, mind uploading becomes possible. So you can implant a mind in someone's body, right? Or you can upload your mind in a device, right? So you can, think of a USB stick, right? You plug it, a little like on that picture, and there you go. All your minds is on the stick. And then you can export it to a device, right? Then 2040, it says Human 3.0 will be there. And people will spend most of their time in full immersion reality, like in the Bruce Willis movie, right? 2045, singularity occurs. AI surpasses human beings. They are more smart. Humans disappear to some extent. They become sort of like, quasi-machines. We have USB sticks. Well, it won't be called USB. It will be a new standard instead of our brain. We've uploaded all what we knew from the past, and we have a new system here. We have a sort of exoskeleton. It's very, very scary. And then it says, maybe machines will take over, and machines will fight, but machines are humans, humans are machines. And maybe this is the end of the world. Maybe not, because they will kill each other, and it will blow up the Earth. But maybe one of them, I don't know if you wrote that actually, but maybe one of them will actually go to Mars or somewhere else in another galaxy. You don't know. He says it's very unlikely, actually, this sort of scenario of the Terminator scenario, right, where machines take over and destroy humanity. So he says it's unlikely, but it could be. So I don't know, how old are you? On average, well, how old are you? You're 20. So 2045, when is that? 30 years. Right. So when you turn 50, guys, you'll be human 3.0. You want that to happen? Want to live in this world? Eternal life on another planet. Maybe. Right? Sorry. So you see, a lot of people, when you read that, they say, well, it's awful. We don't want that. We like it better in the past. Let's, stop progress. Let's stop making computers. It's too dangerous. At the same time, scientists tell you that life in human flesh will come to extinction one day. That the Earth will disappear, right? And there's prospects, right? In I don't know how many years. So maybe those machines, those things that we created, man-made, are just, our second life. Right? So if you believe in the intelligence of man, we're talking about artificial intelligence, but maybe we have found, some people say that we have found the solution to eternal life. I'm going to stop there because, we're in a law school. So it seems a little surreal to talk about that in the context of a law school course. But, so maybe keep that as sort of alpha and omega of the class, right? This sort of horizon that goes, well, describes this sort of doom scenario, anticipation. Just keep it in mind, I don't think it should be a sort of proxy for every decision we make on the design of regulation, but it exists, and people say Kurzweil is a very decent scientist. He's not a sort of crazy sect person. Is a very, very senior scientist and scholar, and there is some credibility to what he's saying. So we'll see. We'll see. I told that to my mother this morning. She was scared to death. She said she liked it better when she's 60 or 70, but maybe not beyond. Okay. Right. So for those of you who watched a little movies and read a little about this already, there's a debate amongst philosophers over the nature of that intelligence, right? Whether it's actually, whether you can call that intelligence. So it's really a philosophical debate. I don't want to enter too much into that. The bottom line is, if you consider that this is intelligence, maybe with it comes a sort of rule or principle that you should treat such AIs alike humans, right? It's intelligence after all, and so you should show a certain level of equality in dealing with AI. For instance, if it comes in a machine, it's intelligence after all, right? So some people say, like Turing, there's the famous Turing test. It says if you have a person like you and me, and you make it talk to through a teletype. So at the time of Turing, a teletype is something like you could compare that with basically exchanging SMS with two subjects, and you don't tell him what he's doing and who he's talking to. One of them is a machine, the other is a human. If he can't make the difference, then it means that the machine is intelligent like a human, right? So this is called the Turing test, right? So you make someone talk through a teletype, can't see who he's talking to, just exchanging text, right? And if he cannot make the difference between a machine and a human, then it means that the machine is intelligent, right? Now so it's been disputed. There's a paper by Searle who says, no, this is nonsense. It's completely stupid to say that. And he has developed something called the Chinese room argument. So what is the Chinese room argument? He says, so the story is a little different. So imagine you're in a room. There's two slits, windows. You can't see nothing. And through one window, you receive Chinese characters, right? And in the room where you stand, you have a table which converts Chinese characters into the Latin alphabet, right? And through the second slits, you would basically sort of convert the Chinese characters in Latin, right? So if you're the person on the opposite of the room, you may think that it's intelligent under the Turing test, right? It looks like a perfect translation for the one on the other side of the room. But what's interesting and what Searle says is you can do that. You can certainly convert Chinese to Latin alphabet to our language without understanding a word of Chinese, right? And that doesn't make you intelligent, right? You're intelligent if you can understand what you're doing consciously, right? So he says the Turing test is flawed because it doesn't make a machine that it's able to simulate what a man can do and fool other people, because the Chinese room argument shows that a human itself would meet the Turing test, being unintelligent to the point that he cannot understand Chinese, right? So it's been a little discussed whether the Turing test was making sense, because the machine would probably not understand what it's doing when it's exchanging with a human, right? but still be labeled intelligent. Right? You talk to the machine obeys to certain processes, does not really know what it's doing, does not really understand what it's doing, it's just processing info and returning info. So this is the controversy. So, under the Searle Chinese room test, an AI is not necessarily intelligent. It's just using brute force computational power to replicate, but doesn't understand what it's doing. Okay? And so if it's not intelligent, then maybe you don't need to show as much equality and deference and respect to the machine. So this is the philosophical debate, right? Intelligent, not intelligent. So there, again, on that, there's big controversy. Maybe another movie that you may want to, so it's not a course about movies, but there's one very good movie, actually, about AI. I think it's screened 2 years ago. It's called Ex Machina. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's quite good. It's quite good. And they talk a lot about the Turing test, right? And eventually the guy is completely fooled. The guy tries to have... so the guy is a little bit like Steve Jobs, of someone like that. He has this compound in a very remote location and has developed an AI with human embodiments. And he asks someone to come to take the Turing test. And eventually, so for those of you who didn't see it, I'm not going to do a spoiler and kill the... so, just check it. Then you understand the Turing test. Okay. Right. So... Okay, so there's loads of fields in artificial intelligence science. Loads of fields, many fields, right, for which we develop artificial intelligence. So you may have heard about a certain number of them. Deep learning is a word that one hears a lot of, very often. Neural networks, sort of technique that's used to have the machines reach the same outcomes as the mind. So neural networks, basically the machines are structured, architected as a sort of networks of neurons like you find in the brain. Well, speech recognition is one area, a big area of artificial intelligence research. Speech recognition. Siri is sort of speech recognition artificial intelligence. Natural language processing, you type language in a search engine, it reverts a reply, right? This involves natural language processing. Wolfram Alpha, or even the Google search engine, you could think is sort of natural language processing. Artificial vision, you may have heard about that. That's what the sort of technology you have in driverless cars. Artificial vision, recognize a cat from a human, right? Drive through the cat, not through the human. Yeah? If cats are human, drive through the cats. Right? Sort of stuff. Recognize an old person from a young person. Young person, old person, drive through who? Yeah? Not easy. So, visual recognition. Think about soldier robots. Right? They're on the battlefield with a gun. They want to shoot this guy, but there's a sniper there, right? So if they take the time to shoot it, they are going to be shot by the sniper. So they have to recognize many items in a landscape, right, at the same time. So this is a big challenge, right? The driverless car, same stuff, right? It has to see the kid. It has to see the old person. It has to see whether there's, pavements. It has to see whether there's a cliff. So all that at the same time. So combining visual recognition is a very, very complex process, right? Think of medical diagnosis, right? So some scientists want to build machines to read X-ray prints, so that radiologues and people like that become jobless, right? Why not have a machine read whether you have a broken arm or a broken leg, right? So this is the sort of things that visual recognition tries to do, artificial vision. Okay. Now, I just want to maybe explain a little where science stands today. I'm no scientist, but I've done a little bit of reading. So there's one of the things that is complex is that when you want to teach, let's say, a software, an AI, you need to give it some data. Yeah? So you will basically feed the algorithm with data. Let's just say pictures. Data is pictures, right? And very often, you need to tell the AI what the picture is. So you need to give a label, right? So cat, human, old, young, dog, car. So you would do that. So you need to give the AI a sort of inputs, that's the picture, and to give it an output, that's a label, right? And so then you train the software through a sort of trial where you ask it to return results, and when it's wrong, you say wrong. When it's right, you say right. Trial and error, right? And so the machine can improve progressively, right? Knowing when it makes mistakes or not, right? When it confuses an old with a young, a cat with a dog, and so on and so forth, right? So learning through that. This is called supervised learning. Supervised learning. Why is it supervised? Because you need to feed the AI, and you need man intervention to put a label on the input, sort of, qualify the inputs. Right? Now, the problem, of course, the problem with supervised learning is that it's extremely time-consuming. Right? You always need man intervention to label the data. Right? You need loads of data, and data is not necessarily, where do you find the data? I mean, maybe you have 1,000 pictures or 100 pictures, but it doesn't come as and to have the best AI possible, you need as much data as exists, right? And data is a finite resource, and then you need people to train it. You need people to put labels on this. So a big challenge in AI today is to turn to unsupervised learning, right? Where there's no man intervention. So it's sort of the artificial intelligence learning itself, screening data, and there are techniques that are entitled to do that. So, but it's a big frontier in science today. Other things are very so. Another thing that you have to understand: sometimes putting a label is very complex. Right? There's this famous sentence by an American judge at the Supreme Court. He said, how do you recognize pornography? And he said, well, pornography, I know it when I see it. Right? But how do you define that, right? So how would you train an AI to recognize pornographic content from non-pornographic content, right? So these are things which, even if you can have the time to put a label, it's not easy, right? So there's loads of examples, loads of examples. Natural language recognition, right? All those examples are things I picked up, on the net or in articles. Think about it. You write a sentence which says, I ate spaghetti with meatballs. Okay? And you ask the AI to draw a picture of that sentence. Okay? So it will show you a plate of spaghetti with meatballs. Now, you just change the words, and you input, I ate spaghetti with chopsticks. Chopsticks. For Chinese food, right? Chopsticks. What will the AI do? And this is really a technical problem, but one problem which, to date, generates issues for the scientific community. Where it may actually return a picture of a plate of spaghetti in which you have crunched chopsticks as an ingredient of the spaghetti, right? Because it will not make the difference whether chopsticks relates to the spaghetti or to the acts of eating, right? So those things, those subtle nuances, right, which you cannot run down to a grammatical rule, because even people with strong knowledge in grammar would tell you, well, in this sort of sentence, we just can't explain it, right? Explain in sort of software where chopsticks are the instruments and not the ingredients, okay? So not easy. So we have very powerful systems, but at the same time, they make mistakes, right? And the big question is whether you want a society to use and rely on those devices which occasionally makes those mistakes. One of the prospects in terms of the data problem and the labeling problem that I mentioned earlier, for instance, is solved or at least seen optimistically by the scientific community with the rise of social networks, because people post pictures, comments, songs, things, which they label themselves, right? So big companies, big tech companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they no longer need to have engineers gather the inputs and label it. They can use the vast amounts, the trillions of data available on social networks, right? You do the labeling for the AI, right? Which will eventually replace your brain. We're all fooled. Okay. Any question at this stage? No question? Yes? Don't worry. Like I said earlier, things which appear on the slides are indicative. If I don't talk about that, it doesn't mean that there will be an exam question about it and that I'm going to kill you because you don't know what knowledge representation is. I will remember. Everything is taped, actually. So, voilà. To know that. Okay. So knowledge representation is basically a field of AI research which tries to represent how the mind makes decisions, right? So it sort of tries to represent, to map how the mind process works, right? So for instance, you may all have seen decisional trees, right? Decisional trees. So I want to go to my office. So two options. I walk or I take my car. Well, if I take my car, two more options. I can drive through the parking lot or I can drive through the road. If I drive through the road, two options, right? And same sort of stuff with walking to the office. If I walk to the office, I can stop for a coffee, not stop for a coffee. If I stop for a coffee, I'm going to be late. No. So I'm not going to stop for a coffee. If I don't stop for a coffee, maybe I get a cold. Why that? Because it's very cold outside. Clack, 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 clack. So knowledge representation seeks to sort of map out how the brain operates. The problem, of course, so I just took the very stupid and basic example of a decisional tree, which is sort of stage one of knowledge representation thinking. Now there's more, complex research and techniques on how to represent how the brain operates. The mind operates, and that's what they're trying to do to help the machine be more like human intelligence, right? So that's what they do. Knowledge representation. Okay, I wanted to show you a picture because that sort of shows you where we stand today. I don't know if you can see. So this is a visual recognition artificial intelligence that generated those results. I think it comes from a research team from Google. And so here is the right answers from the AI. So for instance, on the first picture, it says, this is a person riding a motorcycle on a dirt road, Well done. Describes without errors. So there you have, so you can see one mistake. So it says 2 dogs play in the grass. Well, there's not 2 dogs, there's 3 dogs. But you see, it's so dogs and the grass, right? Then you move, and there it says, this is a little girl in a pink, that's right, in a pink hat, and she's blowing bubbles. Well, she's not blowing bubbles, right? She's basically close to her mother, so maybe that's a bubble, but so that's a mistake. And then I think this one is the one I like the best. So this one is, according to the AI, a refrigerator filled with lots of food and drinks, right? So this is a yellow school bus parked in a parking lot, okay? And this is a dog jumping to catch a frisbee. So you see where we stand, right? It's making good decisions, time and time again, but it's also doing random mistakes. And this is a concern. This is where they want to improve. I know if you'll get the sort of sound if I do that. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it, actually. No, you can't see it. Okay, I would advise you, when you get the slides, to watch this video. It's very short. It's 30 seconds, right? It shows you what the IBM AI can achieve. It's quite funny. Okay. Now, a word about robotics. So far, I've been talking primarily about AIs, right? And if you want to reduce AI to something, you can think of AI as a software, right? Now, robotics and robots are what you may call agentsified AIs. So it's artificial intelligence with agency, with a certain degree of embodiment and physical appearance. I'm not talking about anthropomorphic appearance, right? But I'm talking about a certain degree of embodiment and physical existence, right? The AI is intangible. The robot is an AI with a tangible presence in the world, right? Now, the course is not really concerned about the sort of challenges met by robotics in fields such as power or mechanical processing or material science. There's loads of discussions about how to make sure that a robot can operate for more than, let's say, 30 minutes. I have a friend who's an engineer. He said, when we talk about robots and when you see robots in movies, you always assume that they can do loads of things, but what you don't see is that they often have a big backpack, huge, right? And the backpack is a battery, and the battery is pretty low in autonomy, right? The other thing that you don't see that very often around the robots, you have like 50 engineers, controlling everything what the robot does. They operate in a sort of controlled environment, right? So you see the nice movie. The robot is completely autonomous, can do fantastic things. Well, the state of research is not that far, or not at least as far as you can see in movies. Now, that said, so bots are there. There was a survey 2 years ago that was conducted. It's not really representative because the sample on which the survey was conducted is quite small. But the survey was asking people, what do you see as the most useful applications for robotics? And so I quite like this one. Actually, it says the main application that we believe will be useful for society is prosthesis. So, you know, a bionic arm, a bionic leg, those sorts of things. Industrial robots, much like the ones we already use in the car factories, right? But even better. So for all sorts of industrial applications. Surgical robots, so robots able to do surgery on people, right? The drunken surgeon with the shaky hand will no longer operate in the lab, right? That will not happen. A robot who doesn't drink will be in charge. Nanorobots. Nanorobots are very, very nano-sized robots, which can, for instance, I know, cure a disease that you have deep inside your body, right? That kind of stuff, right? Or operate at very high level of precision and low levels of size. Social care, companion robots. We'll need a friend, right? Sometimes we're depressed, right? Sometimes we are lonely, right? Maybe you need a cleaning lady. You need a vacuum cleaner that will do the job itself, right? So regardless of the needs for care, the needs for love, there's a bot for you, right? There's music playing robots, right? There's driving robots to some extent. You could say that's a sort of, you know, some people like to drive, but they don't like the driving, they just like the sightseeing. Okay, the bot will do it for you, right? So those are the sort of areas. Autonomous vehicles for society, you know, still that's interesting because we just talk about that all the time, right? Driverless cars, and people say, well, you know, it's a new black. We live in a society where the car is really important in life. And, you know, when you ask, so when you see the survey, they just rank it like not really, you know, in the top 3. So maybe the people say, okay, it's nice to have automated cars, driverless cars, but after all, maybe it's just a reflection of people who think that we should get out of the car age, right? And so it will be already better when we have driverless cars because they will be less wasteful, more efficient, there will be less traffic, and this is better for humanity. So all the car makers, they're thinking, well, this is a new frontier, we're going to sell billions of them, you know, we're going to basically, you know, change the industry from cars with drivers to cars without drivers, but maybe, you know, the people just like the driverless cars because they represent a world without as many cars as we have today, right? And that's maybe one of the big mistakes in this sort of economic calculation. So that's where we stand. So robots, just a few more things. Okay, I'm already beyond schedule. Maybe we'll move to that. So next week, I had a few more slides to show you. The thing I want to tell you to close maybe on Isaac Asimov. A lot of people think that Isaac Asimov, sci-fi writer, so a writer of science fiction books, right, came up with this book, I, Robots, and a number of novels on robots. And the books and the novels often make reference to the 3 laws of robotics, right? Law number 1 is a robot shall do no harm to a human. Law number 2 says a robot shall obey to a human unless complying with law 2 breaches law 1, right? Law number 3 says a robot should protect itself, its own existence, unless this leads to breaches of law number 1 and law number 2, right? So Asimov came up with that 3-pronged legal system, and the idea of Asimov was to actually have those laws embedded in the robots, right? This is a beautiful thing for the lawyer. Think about it when you go back home, right? We do law, which is, we can't plant law in your brain so that you comply all the time, right? But that you can do with a robot because you can program it, right, to be compliant with the law. So there's a big enforcement issue that you can avoid with robotics, right? So Asimov came up with this idea that if we program robot this way, normally it should work. But what Asimov shows in his books is that the law derail, right? They look very nice, they look clever, but those laws, they lead to random mistakes and catastrophic situations, if you apply them, right? If the robot tries to comply with them. And this is interesting to close on this, because what Asimov was saying in his book was, we probably need laws to govern those new forms of intelligence, but we have to be careful, because as humble as we are, right, we always have the belief that with law we can solve everything, and in fact designing laws may lead to catastrophic situations, right? So be careful what you wish for. You want law, and maybe law is needed, but the design of the law is very important, and it can be designed very poorly. So that's what he had as an idea. Next week, I'll talk a little more about robots, how you define them, the sort of things that we have, and we'll move to the sort of social challenges. Thank you for your attention. Sorry I was a little too long.